Welcome to Inside Startup Investing, the only podcast where you can invest in every guest. On this episode, I will be speaking with the founder and CEO of Our Bond, Doron Kempel. Our Bond is a unique company creating a whole new realm of private security. The simplest way to think about it is a Ring security camera, except it's built to serve you, the individual. Imagine being able to not just protect your physical home, but yourself while you move autonomously through the world. Whether it's a walk to your car at the end of a long shift or a walk to your friend's place after a night out at the bars. This is a fascinating company, and if it was just a concept, I'd say it was too good to be true. But a few things that sold me on Our Bond that you should listen for in this episode are first, Doron has built two companies before Our Bond. Combined, they have sold to massive corporations for nearly $1 billion in cash. So this is a founder that genuinely knows how to build exceptional businesses with real outcomes for investors, and he has taken a ton of his own money from those past wins to back this new venture. Second, Our Bond grew to over $7 million in revenue last year and has found product market fit in selling to massive corporations that want to protect their own employees. Lastly, they have served over 1 million calls since founding the company and have helped hundreds of thousands of individuals in truly uncomfortable and even dangerous situations. I was certainly a skeptic to start, but I and the Kingscrow Capital team have been convinced of its long-term potential as a category-defining company. So with that, let's get on to the show and welcome Doron. Doron, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
It's my pleasure. So for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background, which is really, really interesting, and how you came to found Bond.
Sure. I started the company in 2017. Prior to that, I focused mainly on information technology infrastructure. Make sure everybody now wakes up after having said that. I was founder and CEO of two companies. One was acquired by Hewlett-Packard in 2017, the prior one by IBM in 2008. Before that, I was Vice President General Manager at what is now Dell. I was on the EMC part, which was the largest data storage and data protection company in the world. And earlier in life, I was Deputy Commander, Military Special Operations, so I'm familiar with security. I'm a U.S. citizen since 1994, and I'm now running Bond.
Amazing. And just to take one step back, you mentioned two exits to very large companies. Can you talk a little bit about what those exits look like? Because they're not just any exit, they're very, very successful exits.
Thank you. So the prior company named Simplivity, which basically simplified the information technology infrastructure stack that ran everything on x86, I won't get too technical, was acquired for about $700 million by Hewlett-Packard, and the prior one by IBM for about $200 million.
You know, a lot of times we hear in this market that, founders must come here because they couldn't get funding elsewhere, so on and so forth. And when you've had exits like that, that's certainly not the case. I actually think it's really cool of you to provide an opportunity to invest in your business. So let's hop in on what the inspiration was for Bond and what exactly it is.
Right. So I had the prior company acquired. I took a long 3-week vacation, came back from the vacation, dusted up an Excel spreadsheet, wrote on the first row all the criteria that the next company or the next opportunity would need to meet. And against those criteria, I lined up about 7 ideas that came up during the course of the prior campaign. And then I evaluated the ideas against the criteria, knowing full well that none will survive, but the dialectical tension between the ideas and the criteria will give rise to new ideas. And then the idea that we're pursuing with Bond popped up. And in a simplistic fashion, I was looking for a big problem that can be solved. And sometimes it's a matter of time. Eventually, all the problems can be solved. But the question is if you're at the right time or you're too early. And within 3 or 4 months of analyzing the problem that we're going to talk about, which is the problem of personal security and peace of mind, which troubles billions of people globally, I could not say no. So basically, I knew that it's a big problem because I know that it troubles a lot of people who are close to me. It even troubles me relative to the people that I care about. And as soon as I was sufficiently convinced that there's going to be a solution for it, here we are in the pursuit of that mission.
So, maybe this is an overly simplistic way of saying it, but I feel like throughout history, right, When we think about safety security, we think about things like the Ring camera. We think about things that secure the home, things that secure an office space or a commercial office space, right? It's cameras, it's sensors, so on and so forth. But what you've really built is more focused quite literally on the individual human being. So let's talk about what that means.
So when you think about security in general, this is very interesting. It's one of the only sectors whereby the private sector lags the public sector. So when you're thinking about physical security, we're not talking about data security or cyber security. We're talking about physical security. This is a domain that has seen very little innovation over the course of the last 50 or so years. Yes, there are new locking systems, there are alarm systems from the home or for the offices, etc. But when an individual leaves the home, leaves the protected space, could be your home, could be your office, you actually don't have protection. And these are the situations where people feel very uncomfortable. Unless you're a very rich individual who gets a bodyguard, you don't have any solution to that particular problem. Metaphorically, if you like sports, in sports there's the notion of zone defense, right? You are protecting an area. This is what private sector protection is about. What we're doing is we're moving to person. In basketball would be man defense or women defense. But basically, we protect the individual in a manner that is effective, affordable, and preserves privacy. Let's put underscore relative to privacy because everybody's very concerned about that. But what we have done is we address this problem. And with your permission, I'll take a few minutes to talk about the problem because the problem is not intuitive to people.
Please.
The problem is if all of us listening to this podcast take an empathetic step backwards and we think about everybody whom we care about at home, across the genders and the age groups, or people whom we are responsible for. They could be our employees, residents of our cities if we're mayors, our students if we're heads of university, our customers. If you're Uber, you probably care about your customers. So if you think about all these people across the genders, they routinely find themselves in situations that make them feel uncomfortable and sometimes afraid. It falls typically into three categories of activities. Number one, they walk alone at night. Most people don't know that 40% of Americans, French, British, Spaniards, all of the people in democracies, 40 to 50% of them say that they don't feel safe walking alone at night. If you think about the numbers, 40% of Americans is 140 million Americans. If each one of them feels that way only once per week, that's a very conservative assumption. You multiply 140 million by 52 weeks, that's 7.28 billion cases per year. Let's take one of those cases. Let's assume that all of us have a sister, or a brother. Let's assume that the sister is named Rachel. Rachel's 24, she's professional, she works in some high-rise in New York. She leaves the office every day at 6 or 7 p.m. And then she has a 5-minute walk, either to where she parked her car economically, or to the subway. Maybe she's lucky, she walks to her home for about 10 minutes. And every day as she leaves the office, she faces 5 minutes of feeling anywhere between uncomfortable to afraid. As she leaves the building, it's too early for her to dial 911 or 17 in France or 999 in the UK. Now, this is not a 911 problem because 911 is for emergencies. But Rachel has a problem. She feels unsafe. This is the second tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We want to feel safe. By the way, all of us who care about Rachel also have a problem. But it's too early to dial 911. If, God forbid, in the parking lot, the wrong person approaches Rachel, when does she notice it? When he's 2 cars away? What's the closing time? 3 seconds? 2? 3? Did she complete a 911 call? No. If she has a panic button, should we assume that Rachel, at the age of 24, is going to push the right buttons under pressure? We know that even the people whom we train don't necessarily do what we expect under pressure, let alone Rachel. What I just described is a pattern of a problem that most people don't think about because we don't want to think about these things. Too early to dial 911? Until it's too late to dial 911. 7.28 billion cases per year in the United States of somebody walking alone at night feeling unsafe. How many of these cases get to a very unfortunate conclusion? According to the Bureau of Justice, approximately 500,000 women are raped every year in the United States. I'm sorry to say that. It's a frightening number. About 55-60% of them are raped outdoors. I'm guessing that they were walking, doesn't matter if it's during the day, during the night. About 7% of crimes occur in parking lots or parking garages. That's a serious magnitude of the problem. Now, we all know that this problem exists, but as humans, in my humble opinion, we don't like to complain about problems that we don't see a solution for. None of us are complaining about the fact that we're likely not going to be here in 200 years. So people have not been complaining about that problem. That was category number one. I'll move quickly to category number two. All the situations where we find ourselves in the vicinity of a stranger with nobody around. Who experiences that? There are 50 million Americans who are lone workers. They are real estate agents, there are social workers, there are home care nurses, there are delivery people, there are drivers, there are all of our friends or colleagues who work from home since COVID. Who delivers their lunch? A stranger. What about rides in ride-sharing vehicles? Take a guess how many emergency 911 calls every month in the United States from ride-sharing vehicles. About 60,000 911 calls. How many of those are legit emergencies that 911 will handle? Less than 1%, 0.8%. That's about 500. So here are two interesting questions. Question number one, what happens to the other 59,500? Well, 911 tells them legitimately, sir, ma'am, it's not an emergency, you got to get off the line. Second question, why did they dial 911 if they're not in an emergency? Here is something that was a great insight to me. They don't want to be alone. When you feel uncomfortable, you want somebody to look after you. Is there, I'm now bridging to the solution that Bond is there anywhere in the world a service that says the following? Whenever you're in a pre-911 situation, it's not an emergency. You still want somebody to look after you, but you want to make sure that that somebody, that entity preserves your privacy, right? Because we're embarrassed sharing with our employers that we're afraid. Reach out to us. We will use artificial intelligence and security agents to look after you, only when you ask us to. We will be able to detect that something is out of the ordinary. We will then engage to check what's going on with you. If we need to, we'll calm you down. If we need to, we'll guide you. If we need to, we can deter unwanted company. I'll explain. And if it gets to an emergency anywhere in the United States, and from Bond's perspective in 28 countries around the world, we know how to get to the first responders who are local to your situation and enhance the likelihood of positive outcomes. There is no such service in the world. That's why we've built Bond. That was category number two. And category number three, of course, are children. For those of us who have children, when they're not under supervision, we're a little worried. So all of us parents have one of about 50 free apps that show us where the kids are. Now I look at my app and I see that my son I think he's outside of school. I call him, he doesn't respond. What do I do now? No solution. I'm 30 minutes away. I can't activate 911. It's not a 911 emergency. In summary, Chris, across all these categories, in our analysis, over 10 billion cases per year in the United States alone, where it's too early to dial 911. Unfortunately, a small minority, but a painfully large number of cases are going to get to it being too late. What we've established is this new paradigm of preventative personal security and peace of mind platform that allows you to do everything that I just described. You want to be looked after? Activate Bond. We're going to look after you. We can detect that something is out of the ordinary. We'll engage. We'll guide you. We can deter. We can orchestrate 911. Now, in order to accomplish all of that, Chris, we had to invest a lot of money in technology because you can't do all of this in a manner that is massively scalable, highly reliable, and affordable. So we've invested more than $100 million in the company, and you're right, we had to raise a lot of capital. That was not a problem because the vision, the promise is so great. But the heart of the Bond service are the Bond personal security agents. These are men and women whom we recruit, background check and train. They're all trained on 911 techniques, but then we train them on the Bond services. Take a guess, let's your audience think how many Bond services there are. We all have two mental models. Number one is a panic button. Number two is an app that shows us where the kids are. We've developed 14 services. Our agents in the command center are experts on those 14 services. And at the request of our members, that's what we call the end users, they respond within 4 seconds via the Bond service on the phones of the users that I'm showing you right now. What distinguishes Bond, Chris, from any other service in the world are the preventative security services. Rachel, my daughter, your sister, our mothers, or David, doesn't really matter, is not an emergency yet. By the way, if they're in an emergency, they'll just click the SOS button and connect them to local first responders. But the unique services are the ones that allow you pre-911 to get basically attention. You choose any one of those services, like Ready an Agent, or Track Me on the Go, or...
Thank you for connecting with Ron. This is Deanna. What's the situation?
Hey Deanna, thank you for responding so quickly. I'm safe. I'm just demonstrating to Chris. Chris is on a video conferencing screen. I'm completely safe. I'm going to introduce you to Chris. Just say hi. No need to deter him. Is that okay?
Yep, that's okay.
Chris, one of our agents.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Deanna, I'm safe. Can I disconnect?
Yes, you can. Take if choose a buy. We're here 24/7.
Good job disconnecting. So my daughter Rachel feels uncomfortable. She clicks video monitor me. In 4 seconds, a polite agent, but you can see that Deanna can turn it on, right? You can say, Doron, here's what I need you to do. Step away from the door. Move to the... This is what the security agents are. He appears on her screen. He says, Rachel, what's the situation? She has him on her phone. Says, everything is okay. Do you mind walking me to my car? Think about this. This is the most natural request in the world. She wants somebody to walk her to her car. He says, of course, that's my job. Rachel, anything in particular worries you today? She says no. He walks her to her car. We have now, for the first time, addressed this too early to dial 911 gap.
Yep.
Now, your question is going to be, Doron, what happens if somebody's approaching Rachel? The agents are trained and tested every week on their ability to get the Rachels or the Dorons of the world out of the situation. Doron, go back into the building. Step into the CVS, lock yourself in the car. But if we can't get Rachel out of the situation, let's think tactically. Most people don't do that. Who's most likely approaching Rachel? I'm going to be statistically exact. Male, opportunistic, wants to survive, chooses the targets very carefully. Number 4, doesn't want eyewitnesses. Think about it. No perpetrator wants eyewitnesses unless they're out of their minds or they're on a mission. 99.999% of them are not in the mission. Even if it's political violence, they want to get back to their normal life. They don't want witnesses. What do? We bring a witness. The agent says to Rachel, Rachel, I'm with you, but I need you to stop. Gently turn your phone screen towards the approaching stranger. Let me speak with him. And to the stranger, sir, this is a live video recorded call. I'm a security of the firm Bond. The lady or the gentleman feel uncomfortable. I'll handle the situation. You do not need to help me. Have a good evening. We don't blame him. We don't agitate him. We give him a diplomatic out. How do we know that this works? We've already delivered on more than 1 million service requests, over 200,000 video monitoring cases. Out of those, we had to deter people in more than 200 cases. It has worked all those times, outdoors and indoors. I was worried, Chris, in 2017 that there are going to be cases where we're going to agitate somebody. It's going to clubber our member, toss the phone away. By the way, I'm willing to live without outcome. What I'm afraid of are much more severe cases. But up until now, we've been lucky. There hasn't been any violence against our members. So to your question, we built this because there's a big problem, because we think it can solve it. It's now proven. It's growing very fast. Back to you. Thank you for being patient.
No, it's obviously fascinating and something the likes of which I don't think we've really seen before. Obviously, the next question, it all sounds amazing, but then a question becomes, well, with this being so innovative, so new, how many people are actually using this, and are you making any money? So let's talk about the actual traction around this and how you have found a way to scale and get a lot of people using the platform by going through the corporate channel.
Great. So we've been very fortunate because we knew that we need to explain what the problem is in order for people to understand why Bond is so unique. We call it PUBS, Problem Unique Bond Solution. So we've been lucky in that the largest corporations in the world, think about one of the 3 largest smartphone vendors in the world, think about one of the 3 largest sports apparel companies in the world, one of the 3 largest credit cards in the world. All of those leaders understood the vision, and they're buying the service for their employees, tens of thousands of employees, now also internationally, and in some cases even for their customers. So the traction is great. The company is not yet profitable, but the company is making money, and we've grown 5x 2023 over 2022. And the way that we make money is by selling subscriptions. So if you're a chief security officer of a company. We would meet you. We would explain this problem that your employees face in these categories of being too early until it's too late. You typically are very impressed. By the way, the bond advisors include former heads of U.S. Secret Service, FBI, major police, military, special ops, so we get high credibility very quickly. And then those companies pay a subscription for their employees, and offering the service is profitable for us because at the end of the day, most of the services are based on technology. So I showed you a service that is expensive to us, and that's an agent who's engaged live. But in most cases, the members click services like Ready an Agent, Track Me on the Go, or Security Check, and those are digital services. And only in a small percentage of activation of those services do the agents need to get involved, which would cost more money. So on every account, we are profitable. Of course, within an account, you might have a few tens of thousands of employees. Some of them sometimes are in situations that are very expensive for us. So we're not profitable on a per person basis, but we are profitable on a per account basis. And this is growing very fast.
Well, it sounds a little bit like the model. And by the way, you have millions and millions in revenue, right? I think it was over 7 million last year. But it's a little bit like an insurance policy. Like you cover everyone, and then amongst that, there's going to be a subset that actually end up needing the services. So obviously, there's some big corporations signing up. What are the biggest deterrents to corporations wanting to sign up? And then I'd love to hear a little bit about some anecdotal stories you can tell us about really positive experiences working with the platform.
Sure. So turns out that corporate America spends about $2,000 per employee in what they call workplace violence. That's the total set of costs that are associated with potential harm to your employees. 80% of the cases of violence against employees are from third parties. They're not from other employees. And that's very expensive because people don't come to work. So you lose revenue. Some people leave the companies. Now you need to recruit other people. And there's a risk and harm to reputation. Sometimes there are lawsuits. So this is very expensive. In addition, if you're a retailer, for instance, just as an example, we have a lot of retailers, customers, churn rate is very high. And the employees complain that they don't use public transportation to come to the office. Plus, to the store. Plus, as we know, there's some shoplifting in the stores. So that rattles them, even though that they know that the violence doesn't target them. And then when they leave the office to have their lunch break or go home or go to the subway, they feel uncomfortable. And now they have Bond as a personal security companion. A few examples. One of the services that I described is video monitoring. I already gave you a sense that we have saved people in more than 200 cases where we deterred people away. Another service that is very popular is called Ready an Agent. Let's assume that I'm a home care nurse. I could be in all the other situations that activate video monitoring. I'm driving by myself and I want to be monitored, or I'm in an Uber, or I'm walking alone at night, or I feel a little dizzy, or I'm accepting a delivery home. If I'm a home care nurse, I'm about to knock on a door of a client. I click the Ready an Agent button. This arms the service. Now all I need to do is rest my finger on the screen. In this second, a Bond agent has me on a map on his screen. He sees that I'm Doron Kempel. I'm in, say, 80 Columbus Circle, New York. So long as my finger is on the screen, they know that all I want is for them to look after me, but not to engage. My hand can be by my side or in my pocket. Nobody needs to know that I'm getting what I want, attention. But if I release the screen, it starts a countdown. The only way to stop the countdown is to enter my own personal code, which I've now entered. Bond assumes that I got home, I met Chris, etc. But if I feel unsafe, or even if somebody grabs me, all I need to do is release my finger. At that point in time, nobody enters the code. What will Bond do? Enter via video on the screen of the member to check what's going on with him or her. And we've seen some very difficult cases over the last 5 years. We went live in 2019. One of those cases, I won't say what is the location. I don't want the relevant member to feel uncomfortable. But one day, one of our members is walking home from work. She's on Ready an Agent. Releases the screen, doesn't enter the passcode. Escalation to our agent, sees that she's in a park. Comes in on video, sees the sky. Apparently her phone is on the ground facing the sky. Next to the phone, there's a dark object on the ground, presumably the woman. He has her name and location. He double clicks her profile. She shared that she's epileptic. In any location in the United States, by the way, in the United States, there's 6,000 911 centers. They're called PSAPs, Public Safety Answering Points. We know how to connect to the right one that is responsible for that particular area. We call them, we tell them we have a member down, potentially epileptic seizure. They send the medics. We guide them to the park. In the park, they find the woman. She was unconscious. I don't want to use big superlatives like we saved her because I don't know what would have happened otherwise, but it did not look good. Remember, they don't know that she exists. They don't know that there's emergency. They don't know where she is. We connect the dots. They help her out. Another case, so this is a service called Ready and Agent up here. You can see on the blue bar here that our members can reach out to us in various situations. A few months ago, one of our members comes out of a bar. She enters the car of a man she met in the bar. He told her he would drive her home. He's not driving her home. By the way, statistically, that is a very bad situation. When a male is driving a female in the car against her will, very bad situation. She decides not to click the emergency button here because she's afraid that he's going to notice, the SOS button, because he's going to notice and it's going to take too much time for the police to arrive. Instead, she clicks the chat button, puts the phone down. Bond agent receives the chat message, sees that she's not entering information, opens one-way audio, listens in, determines an emergency, connects to the 911 PSAP that is local. This is, by the way, in Connecticut. They initiate a search and rescue. Again, they don't know that she exists. They now chase a car that we see as a dot moving on the screen. We tell the police what we hear in the car. They stop the car. In my estimation, it was not headed in a good direction. I'm staying away from superlatives. So we've handled more than 1 million service requests today. Out of those, a lot of emergencies and life-saving situations. And the corporations that have bought the service and a lot of the consumers who buy the service are very appreciative of what we offer.
As I asked earlier, what are some of the situations where a corporation pushes back or isn't interested? Like, what is it? There's not enough pain point, enough employees, enough people on site. What is it that detracts them from doing it? Just in thinking about the upside scenario for the business.
So there's a very small number of cases where the chief security officer says, I don't see the problem. Nobody's worried to walk alone at night. And if he goes that way, and I purposely say he, because it's the he, not the she, don't get it sometimes, we tell them, you wouldn't know because employees don't want their employers to know that they feel uncomfortable. Run a pilot and you'll see the reality, and pilots tell a lot. But typically when we come to a corporation, they don't have a budget line item for what we do because it's completely novel. But then they go to the chief financial officers, there's great support, and they need to decide what's the first wave of onboarding. And then after that, they go to wave 2, they start adding it to the budget, etc. So I can't think of a situation where somebody says that this doesn't make sense. And I think that this is fast becoming the new standard of care. Now, once you get to a tipping point, as we all know, then what are some corporations going to say to their employees? That we, unlike the other largest leaders, don't care about your safety and peace of mind. So this is going to be a standard. In addition, at some point in the game, insurance companies are going to understand it, and then they're going to require it. And once they require it, it becomes a discount, or you have a more expensive policy if you don't use it, then it almost pays for itself. And we're looking for that inflection point.
In terms of the funds that you're currently raising, how will they be utilized to kind of push the organization forward?
Right. So given that we have reached what marketeers call product market fit, as you know, what we now need to do is put a lot of money in sales and marketing in order to separate ourselves and become Uber-like. So the idea is to raise more capital than what we're raising on WeFunder, which is symbolic, but also opportunistic. So on one hand, I'd like our members and anybody else to be part of this particular mission because this is a mission that democratizes personal security, so why not? It could very well be that given the connection with the mission, a lot of people will want to invest and we will raise large amounts of capital via this particular vehicle. We're looking at it right now. It's very positive how fast people are investing. And if you look at who the investors are, they're sophisticated people. So that gives me a sense that this could actually be very large. But in parallel, we're raising capital via Reg D and those are for larger checks of 100,000 and more. The idea is, to your question, to raise a certain amount of capital that takes us to the next value inflection point, say by the end of 2025. And at that point in time, with where I think the valuation is going to be much higher than what it is today, then we need to raise another $50 million and make sure that everybody knows about bond, because right now, if you were to quiz people that you know, they're not going to know what bond is about, and we need to fix that. But we need to fix that in a manner that also protects the cap table.
What you've built is, from my perspective, new, novel, and frankly has created a category of security that hasn't existed. So when you think about exit potential, obviously your last two companies you've had acquired by large companies. Do you think this is the type of thing that gets acquired by a security type company, or is this more of an IPO standalone type of company from your perspective?
Okay, so thank you for that question. So in our journeys as optimistic founders, we need to evaluate on an ongoing basis what is the potential of the company. And the prior two companies reached intersections where the value that was offered by the acquirers represented where the company is going to be in 3 or 4 years, and it makes sense for the shareholders to sell. And therefore, I recommended, and this is what we have done. With this company, I think this could be very large. How very large? There are 4.5 billion smartphone owners in the world. Is there a reason why not all of them are going to be on bond? Just think how large that could be. So with that being the opportunity, it wouldn't be my recommendation, but I'm open-minded. I'm a business person to sell tomorrow. I think we need to harvest through growth. The company needs to IPO, and we need to see how large that could be. Which brings us to the second half of your question of who would want to acquire something like that. I think that once it becomes clear to large corporations what this could be, the likely acquirers are much larger than security companies. So the security market is in our estimation, so according to third parties, about $338 billion market in 2030. Add to that the 100 billion that we're probably adding, we're talking about a 430 or so billion dollar market. I think it could be very large. And then the question, who are the acquirers? But at that point in time, you ask yourself, does Amazon want to sell to Walmart, or does Amazon want to be Amazon? And I think that the opportunity here is to become bond. But we'll wait and see. We're going to be rational about it. In summary, I never enter these things with a thought of an exit. I don't use the word exit. I enter, I don't exit. But they're harvesting opportunities, and I think that they're going to be harvesting opportunities along the journey.
I want to give you the last word here. For those who are on the line, thinking about investing, not sure yet, what would you say to them?
Well, everybody needs to decide what's right for them, of course. But if people are interested in investment and they're interested in investing in private companies, in other words, they want to invest when a company is still not too expensive with its stock, the reason that I continue to invest, the reason that I'm the largest investor and shareholder in bond, is because I believe that there's a huge opportunity here, not only to create an impact on the lives of people, but also to create great financial impact for the investors. And I think that now is an opportune time. Why is it opportune? It's not too early. In other words, there is product market fit. We've built this technology. It works. It saves lives. People love it. People on board. There's almost no churn on this platform. And I think that it's not too late. In other words, we're not at a point where it's so expensive that you ask yourself, is this going to grow? And say, yes, there are billions of people who are not on the platform. This is going to grow. So not too early, not too late. I think this is opportune time to invest for those people who invest in private companies.
If you liked what you heard on the show today, you could check out why our bond scored a 4.9 out of 5 at kingscrowd.com and an investment from Kings Crowd Capital. You can now invest on WeFunder until September 30th, 2024. And please like, subscribe, and share our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so more listeners like you can find us. Thanks for listening.